Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's BU Industry Insiders webinar, Shifting the Paradigm, Educating 100% of What It Means to Be Human. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm a member of the Career Programs team here in the BU Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is sponsored by BU Alumni Relations and is offered to our 326,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing our alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know we have many alumni joining us from faraway places like Bogota, Colombia, Ecuador, Warwick in the UK, India, Van Nuys, California, Weaverville, North Carolina, Oakton, Virginia, Seattle, Washington, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like West Wareham, Canton, Malden, Cambridge, North Reading, and more. Please know that we truly value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker for the day, some brief housekeeping notes for you. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Zoom online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Zoom support directly at 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Relations website found at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker is eager to answer any questions that you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout her presentation using the Q&A box. If you hover over either the top or the bottom of your screen in Zoom, you should see an option for Q&A. Just click on that and type in your question. Again, type that in as soon as you think about it, and we'll have plenty of time at the end of the presentation to answer some of those questions. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, two-time Terrier alumna, Dr. Ellee Koss. Dr. Koss is an activist, advocate, artist, author, consultant, and coach who works with adults and youth from the heart. Simply put, and these are her words, not mine, she is an SHIT disturber with a purpose. With over 40 years of experience as a consultant and an educator, she's a graduate of Boston University with a PhD in economics and a Bachelor of Arts in International and Comparative Studies. As a professor, Ellee worked to bring out the best of what was within her learners. In consulting, she's worked with clients to build organizational capabilities to create and sustain competitive advantages in the global marketplace. Dr. Koss has been a pioneer and an early leader in creating and utilizing vision and values to drive corporate strategy, transformation, and effectiveness. She's the author of Even Bear Can Learn to Tango, Leadership Wisdom for the Ages. She also commits time and energy to working with youth in vulnerable communities. Her focus is on tutoring, mentoring, and coaching sports, particularly lacrosse. She's actually a member of the Northern California Lacrosse Hall of Fame. As I mentioned earlier, Ellee is also a talented artist, and I encourage all of you to check out her artwork, some of which is going to be in today's presentation, but also at her website at www.elleek.com, and that's ELLEEK.com. Ellee, thank you so much for doing this presentation for us today. I'm going to go ahead and just turn the floor over to you. So if you want to go ahead and get your slide deck up and running, that's all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. So first of all, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, BU. This is kind of odd. I don't have eyes on anything other than my screen. And thank you to everybody that's participating for taking time out of your hectic schedules. I truly, truly appreciate it. The current, here's what I can tell you is that the current paradigm of education has not fundamentally changed in hundreds, if not thousands of years, while much of the world has. And it was a real byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. However, even as much as 2,000 years ago, Aristotle once said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So what I'd like to do today is go on a journey of what ifs to see what might fundamentally transform education. And again, please feel free to ask any and all questions. So take a moment to just read this slide.
Ellee, I actually need you to share your screen for us so we can get
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay.
It was a great introduction though, and now we can dive right in.
Okay, wait. Sorry. I knew there was
That's
something.
okay. No worries at
Okay,
all.
let me go back. Okay. I apologize.
No apologies necessary.
So this is why I couldn't see Jeff. That's why I couldn't see you.
Perfect. Looks good. Take it away.
Okay. So again, could you hear me before?
I absolutely can hear you.
Okay. So I don't have
looks like everything's running 100%.
Okay, I don't have to repeat the whole introduction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take some time and just read this quote. And I'll read it out loud just in case. The plain fact is that the planet does not need more successful people, but it does desperately need more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every kind. It needs people who live well in their places. It needs people of moral courage willing to join the fight to make the world habitable and humane, and these qualities have little to do with success as we've defined it. As much as relevant as this is now, this was written over 30 years ago by David Orr. So every day as I'm cruising through the news feeds, I find articles about education and the disconnect between what companies want, what communities want, and what our education is offering. And especially the thinking that's going into now is what is the increased automation that's coming down the line? What is that going to mean for education and what our needs are? So what I'd like to posit is a what if purpose. What if we created a new purpose for education, or actually had a purpose for education that would be to develop self-generative, productive, and mindful global citizens, creating and living in a world of balance. So just be with that for a minute. Just be with it. Over 30 years ago, I delivered a paper at a conference that was called Education That Works. And in the process of researching and writing that paper, I looked at the etymology of the word educate and discovered that it comes from the Latin educare, to draw out from within. So true education is not about delivering information. It is nor about laying information on top of human beings. It's about bringing out the fullness of a human being from within. So where do we start? What if the context, the ground on which all education was developed was in educare? Think about it. Just think about it for a moment. Just let that sink in. It would require a fundamental reframing of a lot of what we think we know about education, what we believe, what we assume to be true. And where I'd like to start is, let's look at our assumptions about youth. And I would actually assert that if one thing were to transform, and I think there's lots of things that need transformation, but if there's one thing that we were to transform, it is about our beliefs about our learners. So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to take this out of full screen mode, and I'm going to ask you all is it in the Q&A box, Jeff?
They'll actually want to use the chat function.
Okay.
So separate from Q&A, but again, folks, if you hover over the top or bottom of your screen to get the Zoom menu, you'll see chat. And then, Ellie, what would you like them to do in the chat area?
What I'd like you to do is fill in the blank. Youth are, and what are your assumptions? What are your assumptions? What are your beliefs? And don't judge, just put them out there. It's like, what do you believe that youth have as their assumptions about education? Do you believe, what do you believe about the capacity of youth? What do you believe about their willingness to learn? So what I want you to do is just write these, and then in a moment, Jeff's going to read them to me, and I'm going to type them in here. And also, what are your assumptions about the relationship between the youth and the educator? Because at the core of this is that relationship.
So thanks, folks, for typing into the chat. Ellie, Ryan has suggested youth are narrowly focused but distracted.
Focused but distracted. Okay.
Thanks, folks, for chatting in here. Jane suggests they're selfish and easily distracted. Kelly suggests impressionable, energetic, versatile.
Versatile.
Versatile, yep. Open-minded. Sabo has added youth are compliant and disengaged.
And disengaged?
Disengaged, yep. Jane, youth are curious. And that's what we've got right now.
Okay, this is awesome. This is awesome. If we were together, I'd probably spend a little bit more time on it and really draw things out. But everybody, just take a moment and look at this. It's interesting. So we've got on here two of the assumptions that people have are really pushing more possibility about youth. And again, no judgment here. It's just what is. So now what I'm going to posit is, what if the assumptions that you made about youth were these four? And this is just a start. This is not the end all to be all. This is just a start. Youth are capable and knowledgeable. Youth want to make a difference and solve the world's problems. Youth are motivated. Okay, I often hear people, well, they're not motivated. They're not motivated. And I would say, yeah, youth are motivated. It's just a question as to what they're motivated. Youth are motivated and they seek inspiration for guidance. And then the last one is youth can educate us as much as they learn from us. And in that last one, you start to focus on the relationship between how it's framed today, a teacher and student. And one of the things in this new paradigm is really removing those monikers of teacher and student. Because underneath those monikers is teacher, I know, student, you don't know. It's a superior subordinate relationship, and it's my personal belief that if we shifted that into co-learners in the learning environment, and we got rid of those two words, a significant amount of education would fundamentally change. So now I'm going to ask you, okay, so we've touched on the issue of youth. So now to create more empowering assumptions, reflect on other areas that would benefit from transformation. Just take a moment to think about it. So the first question I would ask you is, whoever said you cannot eat and learn at the same time? I would venture a guess that pretty much everybody that's on this webinar has been eating and working at the same time. So why is it that we restrict our youth from eating while they're learning? The next one that I would suggest is, why do our youth have to sit up straight and at a desk in order to learn? So there's a whole series here of assumptions and beliefs that have become solidified institutional barriers to transformation and to education being really effective, and education going to 100% of what it means to be human. There's a lot of conversation now about school hours. That's important. And I'm sure you all can add a lot more to this list. So over the years in my work with organizations, I started looking at different ideas outside the mainstream that were grounded in ancestral wisdom to support organizational transformation and individual transformation. And the one that I landed on is the indigenous medicine wheel. So in the medicine wheel, in the north is the spirit, which organizationally you can translate into vision and values. In the south is the physical, is the ground. Again, translating that into more common terms, it's manifestation, it's production, it's action. In the east is the intellect, which educationally would be analysis, would be left brain activities. And in the west lies emotions or feelings. It's more right brain, it's the art. In the center stands the self. And so the power of the medicine wheel in indigenous cultures is you, the person standing in the middle and observing where are you with regards to the different directions and taking stock, taking inventory and saying, where do I need to grow and develop in order to create and maintain balance? So if you take this model, methodology, whatever you want to call it, and you frame it in the context of education, you can create a holistic curriculum. So let's look at this. So in the north is spirit, in the south, it's the same thing. But if you look at the values and action, that's between the north and the east. In the east and the south are the traditional skills. I would say that the majority of educational programs, particularly K through 12, is so heavily loaded and resides in the east and southeast. That's where you have your traditional skills. That's where you have your math. That's where you have your grammar. That's where you have your science. There's a movement now to create the emotional IQ, and that goes to the southwest and the northwest. But again, it's not a fundamental transformation of the curriculum. It is an add-on. So I'm going to suggest that you can take any subject you want, and we can frame it using the medicine wheel. And you can get at any what are considered academic subjects and master them. So is somebody out there want to give me a subject, anything. It can be a sport, it can be an activity, anything. And let me frame it in the context of the medicine wheel.
So folks, again, if you want to use the chat box to just sort of throw out a suggestion for Ellie in terms of a subject that she can take a look at using this diagram. Thank you, Liz. Chemistry.
Chemistry. Perfect. Chemistry. Specifically, what about chemistry? Give me a specific reaction or something in chemistry. I mean, chemistry has multiple meanings. Are we talking about physical chemistry, or are we talking about chemistry between people? Which actually would go to, once we're talking about the vision of chemistry, that's the conversation you come up with.
I would assume that Liz was suggesting it as, chemistry, the school subject.
Okay. So chemistry
Liz is
is
saying physical chemistry like organic chemistry.
Organic chemistry. So let's look at organic chemistry is about the body. So where did chemistry come from? What is it that developed it? I mean, I'd like to let's look at it, get at it, not through the subject of chemistry, but as the subject of the human body. And the human body of, let's talk about diet. Let's talk about diet, food. Where does food come from? Why do you need food? Where did the notion of eating? And talk about the spirit and the vision of health. Let's start with health. And then let's go down to, in the South, we start talking about the body. What is the body? What are the components of the body? One of which is getting down into the molecular level and talking about organic chemistry. And let's talk about the microbiomes and talking about what constitutes health. So I'm going to get at chemistry through the lens of health. And what is it? Why is there this conversation these days about microbiomes and the science of the gut? And what is our relationship to food? What is it? Where does it come from? And overeating, undereating, you can get into the psychology of nutrition. Why is it that some people every other week is on the new diet of the day? What compels them to do it? So if I go around here and keep asking the question, I am going to get at a lot of higher order conversations of chemistry through the lens of health. Let me give you another example outside of that realm. What about soccer? Where does soccer come from? I don't know. But if you ask our youth to do some research and find out where does soccer come from, what was the vision that created this game called soccer? And then you drop down into the South, you look at the field, you look at the ball, you look at the action. And then in the Southeast, let me ask you a question. How do you bend it like Beckham? And if I start analyzing the question, how do you bend it like Beckham? I am going to get into trigonometry and higher order physics. Without calling them that, and getting into the statistics of soccer, it's the East. And the emotions, everybody knows that probably one of the sports that's out there that is the most emotional are the fans in soccer. And so you can have this holistic conversation about soccer. You can have this holistic conversation about the gut, about health and nutrition that incorporates the specifics of what are called out as separate subjects, doing them, having those conversations in context of something that youth can relate to. So as I said, you can use the 4 directions to deeply learn anything and integrate the traditional content into those subjects. So over time, the power of the medicine wheel, it's iterative, and you're constantly moving around it and in a global exploration. So the question I have is then, how does this relate to the global days of service? I'm wearing my BU shirt, in honor of the Global Days of Service and the global aspect of this. So what if you add a service component every year into the curriculum? You can do this starting K through 12. It doesn't have to be until they're in the high school. You can start in kindergarten and first grade. One thing I know is kids love to help. They love to make a difference. Every year that I have hosted a Global Day of Service in San Francisco, it's been mostly in gardening. The kids that I work with during the week, they come out and they help out with the alumni, and they cannot wait to help. And you don't have to tell them what to do. They're eager and they would love to do it. So what if you add a service component every year that's focused on making a difference? And as youth get older, you can make that component bigger and bigger and focus it on making a difference in the world that's measurable, it's concrete, and it can be in whatever community they want. Maybe it's their local community, maybe it's a national community, maybe it's a global community. Think about who is doing the most work right now on solving the issues of all the garbage that is in the oceans. Basically, every solution that's come up these days are from youth ages, and I'm sorry if anybody's young, on the youth between 15 and 25. And that's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It's a reflection of how much our youth really do want to make a difference. So what I'd like to do is leave you with two things, and then we can open it up for questions and everything. Is one, it's your canvas. You have the ability to create something new. Let go of your assumptions, create new empowering assumptions. Take a blank canvas, take a blank piece of paper, and create something new. And as Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Let's educate the whole human being, not as add-ons, not separating everything out, but as a whole. Respect the humanness in yourself and in our youth. And with that, thank you. And we can open it up, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Ellie. Some interesting things that you've kind of proposed here, and so all of you that are on the call, I invite you to ask questions of Ellie using either the Q&A function or the chat function that you've been using to weigh in. I'll keep an eye on both of those. And while we wait for one of you to break the ice, Ellie, I wanted to ask you, as you and I have been working on this presentation together, you've got me thinking. Your questions at the beginning about whoever said that in order to learn, you couldn't eat at the same time. Who said you had to sit up straight? It occurs to me that as I've thought about that question, those are sort of things that I think a lot of teachers would, or even, education administrators would say was about showing respect for the teacher. You had that quote from Aristotle. I think about his relationship was certainly one of respecting his educators. So how do you think in implementing an educational system that was sort of based on the medicine wheel that you've used as a model, would you be sort of suggesting that the respect of the learners for the learned would just sort of follow if we approached it that way? Or how would the average elementary school teacher make sure to maintain an orderly class if some of those rules went out the window?
Well, first off, I think it's about co-respect. It's not just, you brought up at the beginning, oops, how did I do that? Sorry. I'll get this back up.
No worries.
You started by saying people would assert that it's about respecting the teacher. And I would say, what about the youth and the educator respecting each other. Even with kindergartners and first graders, you can create ground rules together. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be the teacher saying it has to be done this way. You can have a conversation with young kids about what will make this work. I mean, I watch, some of the kids that I work with, I have a little boy that I'm working with right now on his homework. And I think it was a year and a half ago, his father was murdered. And so there's a lot more latitude that we have for him. Having said that, he's doing great. But what I notice, his ability to stay focused, he can do it on his own for half his homework. And the second half of the homework, we have to negotiate what's going to keep him focused. And we negotiate that together. So it's like, okay, what's going to keep you focused? Do you need to run around for a minute? Do you need to go out? Do you need to eat something? Now, this is one-on-one as opposed to a class of 20 or 25 kids or 15 kids. You can have the conversation with them. They know what they want. They know what they need. They know about respect, but respect is a two-way street.
Great, thanks. Great question here from Kelly. Is there a community or group that has implemented this mindset of mutual respect and or this holistic learning style? She'd be interested to see what that community looks like in action. So can you, what you've sort of identified as a model, can you point to any place that's actually kind of using that?
Not exactly. There are places out there that are using pieces of this. Kelly, if you're in Massachusetts, I don't know if you're in Massachusetts.
She is.
There is, yeah. Mm-hmm. Kelly, in Holyoke, you've got Lighthouse Holyoke. It's not exactly the model. They don't demolish all the vocabulary that I do, but I'm very impressed with what they are doing. There's a school out here in the North Bay. I'm in San Francisco, in case those of you don't know that, called the Village School. There are isolated examples, not exactly using the medicine wheel. However, a more holistic sense of learning, absolutely. Hopefully, in the next few years, there'll be more and more critical mass, which will put pressure on more of the public schools. And some of these are public schools, to allow for alternative classrooms, alternative learning environments.
Thanks. Question from an anonymous attendee. Ooh, somebody's hiding their name. I'm in a high-performing school system where the community's emphasis is on academic achievement. We're struggling to get parent buy-in on the SEL, mindset and resilience aspects of teaching children. Are there resources for schools to help with gaining community support?
I'm sure there are resources. What I would do is start pointing people to the whole mindfulness, and I think I know who that anonymous person is. There is a whole movement right now around happiness and around mindfulness, and that is gaining a huge, huge amount of momentum. And I would say keep your eyes open for that whole movement. And I understand the pressures from parents are, in many respects, counterproductive. There are a lot of books out there. There is How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lythcott-Haims. There's more and more. I'm seeing some wonderful things in South Carolina and North Carolina. I met two women who live an hour from each other in the two Carolinas, and they're doing some work also. Is it published? Is there a model out there? No. It's conversations, one person at a time. And I think at the end of the day, I think that the happiness movement that's out there is going to really support shifting mindset of the parents. Because more and more people are discovering that they can go and they can work 60 hours a week in these high pressure jobs and in technology, and at the end of the day, they come home and they're miserable. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Do you have recommendations for somebody who's looking to, I think a lot of people on the webinar today are here because they're interested in improving the educational system. Do you have recommendations for how somebody would go about getting started in changing their educational system towards this kind of direction?
One, if you are an educator, add a module and bring in, find your allies in your system. So it's like, if you're in a school, I suspect there is one or two other people in another class or in another subject that would love to do something with you. And find a way to bring them in, and whether it's for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, find a way to work together to look at it more holistically. The other thing I would encourage people to do is at the beginning of the day or the beginning of your class, and this is how you start to also integrate some of the SEL, do a check-in. Do a check-in with your youth. Find out how they are. How was their night? No value judgments, just amp up the listening capabilities of both the youth, the learners, and yourself, of listening without judgment, holding the space for your youth to share from their heart. If you work in a vulnerable community, it will take some time, but eventually you will be uncovering some of the trauma that they go through on a day-to-day basis. So that's a place that you can start in the confines of your own classroom, your own learning environment.
Great. Oh, sorry. I keep stepping on the end of your
No. Go ahead.
Great question here from Jane. She recalls reading about meditation being used in elementary and middle schools instead of detention or punishing outbursts. Is this in any way a part of the movement that you're talking about?
It's a piece of the puzzle. I mean, if you go back, I'm going back right here. You see in the northwest quadrant, you have mindfulness, reflection. It needn't be just for acting out and detention. And we have an example here in San Francisco, actually, in a vulnerable community in Visitation Valley, where meditation has been supporting a decrease in outbursts. Proactively use the mindfulness, use the reflection, use the meditation. And there is no one right way to do it, okay? So it doesn't mean having to do it, be transcendental meditation. It doesn't have to be walking a labyrinth, but it could be. So do what works for you and for the youth. Find not just one practice, but find multiple practices. Whether it's a moment of silence, at first the kids may be laughing about it, but in a while, support them in finding their center.
Well, thank you everybody for your great questions and your participation during the chat piece. Ellee, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know you're really passionate about the subject, and that's definitely come through in some of your remarks today. So on behalf of BU Alumni Relations, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you all. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was engaging. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. So thanks again, Ellie, and thanks all of you for attending today. I specifically want to thank those of you who've donated to BU in the past. We've got 2 great webinars coming up in May. And also, as Ellie alluded to, this webinar is being hosted as part of BU's annual Global Days of Service initiative, where we engage our alumni in improving their communities around the globe. And Ellie, thank you for the work that you've done in your community around GDS these past couple of years and again today. So if you're interested in more webinars or getting involved with doing some volunteering in your community, please just visit our website at bu.edu/alumni to find out about all the opportunities you have to stay engaged. As always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in doing a presentation like this for the BU community, I invite you to get in touch with me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening, wherever you might be. Thanks again, Ellie.
You're welcome.